I finally got my 33s to stop rubbing on my Toyota Tacoma. If you're new here, I've had a running joke going on with trying to get my tires to stop rubbing since I installed these 285/70 R17 tires. Originally, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't rubbing at all, really, and kind of rubbed a little bit, so I took a little bit of the inside of the fender wall out. That fixed it for a good long time until we were out on an overland trip. On this trip, I was kind of beating the truck up a little bit and I hit a nasty bump going over some rocks and it rubbed really bad. So I had to go back to the drawing board and cut some more out of the fenders. And it was good for a little while. Then, as I built this truck up to live out of, I had some issues with weight. And the added leaf that I installed in the rear wasn't enough to compensate for all the added weight and I had a really bad sag going on. So I had to rework the whole suspension because I couldn't just install new leaf pack back there because of the Bilstein 5100s I had back there didn't have enough travel to compensate for a bigger leaf pack. All said and done, I had to redo the entire suspension, and right now I'm running the Dobson MRR kit all the way to the back with 800-pound leaf springs in the rear, and I like the suspension, but I didn't realize at the time that the new control arms would push the tire back even further, and that comes to the problem. We were rubbing really bad to the point where I couldn't even daily drive this, let alone off-road it in that situation. So at that point, I was living out of this truck full time and it was rubbing really bad and I was nervous about destroying my tires. I did a little bit of trimming on the road, but it wasn't enough because it was actually trimming off the cab mount. Now, if you're new to Tacomas, they have a cab mount that is notorious for causing rubbing when you go up in tire size. Unfortunately, to fix this, you can't just start chopping stuff up. There's two different options you can do to fix this. One of the ones I did because it was cheaper. But I'll tell you guys the more expensive one would cost a shop to install because unless you're a really good fabricator and welder, you can't do it by yourself. It's a whole relocation of that mount. It costs about $2 grand to have a shop do it, what I hear from the forums. I didn't want to do that way. I'm a budget kind of guy, so I found this small little plate on Amazon. It costs about, I think, $30. And what we did is we ended up cutting out where it was rubbing and just pushing it back a little bit, about a ½ inch. And that was enough to make my tires not rub anymore at all. So to do this, it wasn't too big of a job, surprisingly. I was nervous it was gonna be a bigger job than it actually was. So we took the truck over to my dad's buddy's garage, and between me, my dad, and my dad's buddy, he's a pretty good welder. He claims he's not, but better than I can do. And that was good enough for this situation. And the whole install here took about 4 hours. All we had to do is we took that plate we got there, we lined it up there and made an outline of that. Then we cut it out with a grinding wheel. That gave us enough room to be able to see how we wanted to mount this up. From there, we ended up throwing a couple little beads on that plate just to get it mocked up a little bit and kind of cut it out a little bit more to make it look as flush as possible and OEM as possible. I didn't want to look all globbered up and kind of put together like that. The one side turned out way better than the other, and that's because the first side we did was our learning experience. And so the corner kind of has an edge there. It doesn't look as nice. My dad's buddy on the other side kind of was experimenting a little bit, filled that gap in a little bit more, and then we grinded that down to make it look really OEM. I ended up really liking this because you can't really tell we ended up chopping the truck up as much as we did. Well, from there, we ended up chopping a little bit more of the fender lining out of the truck, which at this point, we're already chopping parts of the frame off, so what's it matter, right? Then another thing we had to take into account was the pinch weld that's in there. We ended up beating that pinch weld inside and folding it in on itself, and then spray painting it with some black spray paint as well. So it's really hard to see that we actually did that much chopping on the truck when you look at it. All in all, to do this cab mount chop, the process took about 4 hours, which isn't that bad because I was thinking it was gonna be like an all-day thing. So I'm pretty happy with that. And like I said, it wasn't at a professional shop or anything. It was just 3 dudes chopping on a truck, and it turned out pretty well. And now I can go off-road, really use my suspension, get the travel out of it, and not rub and take chunks out of my tire. I ended up taking this truck out on the beach while it was rubbing like that, and I was hitting some good bumps there, and I ended up taking a couple little notches out of my Wild Peaks here. So I wanted to get that fixed as soon as possible. And that's the process of me getting my truck all fixed up there. I just want to let you guys know this story. I know I did this a little while ago if you saw my Instagram, and I was just kind of revisiting because I had some time to talk to you guys about it. But I wanted to bring it up to let you guys know if you're running into trouble, running into rubbing, or if you're scared to do anything in your truck because you don't want to do this. It's not that hard of a job. If you have a buddy, get him to help you weld. I mean, that's probably the biggest lesson here is get a buddy who knows how to weld. I'm gonna run through the full setup on the truck real quick for my suspension so you know what I'm running and why I ran into the trouble, just so you have the full understanding of what's going on here. So going to the tires, they're 285/70 R17 Falcon Wild Peaks. To the wheels, they're Method 312 wheels with +0 offset. That's a big deal when you're modifying these trucks. I see guys run into this issue all the time. They don't consider offset and they throw some tires on there not considering offset, and that plays a big role on this platform. Onto the control arms here, and this is where I ran into a lot of my trouble, is the Dobson control arms have +3 caster built in to the control arm. Well, in my head, I was like, oh, okay, that's gonna push the wheel further towards the bumper. I was wrong. I didn't do the proper research and I don't understand it as well as I thought I did. And it actually pushed it 3 degrees towards the back. That's where I ran into my issue. So if you guys are looking at control arms as well, JBC or JBA, and they have adjustable ball joints in them. So you can kind of slide it back and forth a little bit and get that adjustment you need to push that wheel any way you want it. I didn't want to go that route because they are specific to that company. So for example, I was living out of this, and if I needed a ball joint, I can just go to any parts store and get a ball joint for these upper control arms. For those, they're custom ordered from the website. They're the only people that make them. So you'd be out and kind of screwed, to be honest, when you're out on the road. I didn't want to go that way, but I wanted to mention that to you guys, give you another option if you are running into this issue. Then onto the springs. I got the heaviest springs up front here on the Dobson MRR kit because of the weight of the bumper and to compensate when I have a winch. Then on the back, MRR again, with the 800-pound leaf springs. And that's the whole setup on the truck, dealing with suspension and tire setup. I know I get a lot of questions about that. But yeah, I hope you guys really enjoyed this video. Happy Thanksgiving, anybody who celebrates. I feel like everybody celebrates that watches these videos, but happy Thanksgiving. If you're watching this past Thanksgiving, happy belated Thanksgiving, I guess. I don't know. But do me a big favor, hit this like button, hit the subscribe button. It means a ton to me. We're on the road to 10,000 subscribers. We're almost there. We're getting really close. Really appreciate it, guys. Love all the love. Love all the love. Appreciate all the love? I don't know. Check this video out right here. It's pretty good. I'll see you in the next one.